Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome back to the ANG cast, where we talk about video games and everything in between. And we're going to be focused just on the in between today as we cover the 92nd annual Oscars, the Academy Awards that just happened this past Sunday, February 9th. I'm joined today by my lovely wife, Christa. How's it going, Christa?
It's going good.
That's good. So what we're going to do is we have a list up here in front of us of all the nominees and the people that won. So we're just going to break it down category by category, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite movies. If you listen to the podcast that I did with Aaron and Alex, you've probably heard me talk about a lot of these movies already. But we're still going to cover them again today in some fashion just because they were nominated and won some things. So,
And 2019 was a great year for movies, it turns out.
it was for sure. So the Oscars, of course, every year there's some kind of controversy that people like to stir shit up about. And I think this year one of the big things was the in memoriam segment, how they left certain people out.
They did.
I was upset about them leaving Sid Haig out. And if you don't know who Sid Haig is, his last name is Haig. He just died last year, I believe, and he was Captain Spaulding in Rob Zombie's trilogy of movies. So like House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and 3 from Hell. So being a big horror movie fan, and he had like a really storied career before that too. That's just how I know him the best. I think that's how most people know him.
That's his most iconic role.
And then what was the name of that kid actor that they left out? Cameron Boyce.
Cameron something or something.
Boyce,
and then the other guy was
Luke Perry.
Luke something. He was in Riverdale. And technically, he was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That's what most people are upset about.
Yeah, Cameron Boyce is a little bit more understandable because he's most known for the Descendants series, which I think was like TV movies or a TV show or something. I don't fucking know. But people were really upset they left Luke Perry out, and I can really understand, considering that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was one of the biggest movies at this awards, and that was like one of, if not the last project that he worked on, that he was in for a little bit before he died. So... yeah, that's kind of puzzling. And then, of course, Brad Pitt's speech, which I fucking loved because, and
then Joaquin Phoenix's speech. I know you didn't listen to that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I don't know how much people know about him, but he's very, not erratic, but just very off the wall. Like, he really didn't give a speech, how most people give speeches when they win an Oscar, how they say thank you to like their cast and to their crew and directors and stuff. He really didn't do that. He kind of went on a political rant a little bit. And then I don't know if you saw this anywhere, but he said a quote at the end by his brother, River Phoenix, who died. Mm-hmm. He said, where is it? I pulled it up. He said... He quoted one of his songs or something, and run into the rescue with love and peace will follow. Mm-hmm. He said that like at the end of his speech, which I thought most people thought that was really heartwarming, since he lost his brother. But But those are like the big highlights.
Yeah, there really wasn't too much controversy. I mean, Steve Martin and Chris Rock were kind of the only hosts of the evening since the Oscars didn't have a host this year.
Maya Rudolph was great.
And Maya Rudolph and
Kristen Wiig.
Yeah, they were great. But I personally think that Steve Martin and Chris Rock should have been just been the hosts because I thought that they did a good job.
Or Maya Rudolph and Kristen Wiig.
Yeah.
They were great too.
Or
they would have been great.
Tina Fey and Amy Poehler, I think, are coming back next year for one of the award shows. I don't know if it's the Oscars or something else, but they've been confirmed to be doing one of them next year. But yeah, they're fantastic. But anyway, so we're going to start here at the bottom of this list. I'm looking at the official ABC Oscars website if you guys want to follow along at home, or if you haven't seen the full list or just want to see clips of what we're talking about. We'll put a link in the description. It's a full list of all the winners, and if you keep scrolling past the list, there's kind of like highlights too. So if you want to check out what you missed, feel free to do that. The first category that I'm seeing here is original screenplay nominees. So we have Knives Out, we have Marriage Story, we have 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. Of course, Parasite was the winner of that, written by Bong Joon-ho, who's also the director of the movie. And, yeah, the common theme for Parasite, I think, at least for me, I can't speak for my wife as much on this one until I hear her talk about it a little bit more. I really, really liked Parasite. Parasite's like a good 8 out of 10 movie for me. But Knives Out and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood were the two perfect 10 movies for me from last year.
And to be fair too, I mean, everybody has different tastes, of course, so this is subjective, but I agree with you. Knives Out and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood were my movies. I really enjoyed Parasite. Don't get me wrong. I think it has a lot to say, and it does it well, and it's well executed. But to me, it's just that Knives Out and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood they just stood out so far from everything else in my mind.
In particular, like Rian Johnson wrote a really compelling murder mystery. Like Aaron and I were talking about it, and it's not very often. Which we're gonna probably spoil these movies at least a little bit. I'll try not to be like super explicit with spoilers, but we should have put the warning at the beginning, and I guess we can have something pop up and warn people. But you should know that getting into it. And the movies have been out long enough now. I think most people have seen them.
Only a couple have come out super recently.
Knives Out. I won't go into super detail, but it was my favorite movie of last year. If you listen to the podcast that Alex and I did back in December, we covered every single thing that we liked from 2019. And it was Knives Out and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, my top two movies. And Knives Out, Aaron and I were talking about this, so shout out to Aaron from the Final Friday series on the channel, but and from the first episode of the ANG cast as well. But Knives Out was one of the only murder mysteries I can recall in recent years, or in any year, I guess, that like kind of spills the whole plot within the first 30 minutes, and then the next hour of it is just them like resolving it and stretching it out. Because most murder mysteries don't really reach, it's kind of like a pretty standard 3-act play format where, you know, the first act would set up like who's murdered and who the main players are in the story. And the second would be like the detective coming into the scene and finally getting a hunch. And then the third one would be like the big finale. But Knives Out kind of flips that formula on its top, and like they kind of spill everything out in the first like 30 minutes. And you learn very quickly who killed Christopher Plummer's character and the whole story about that. And
we won't spoil that, but it's sad because this is the only nomination Knives Out got, which I felt like it deserved even the editing.
So yeah, the editing was really good. So the only thing I've heard in defense of them excluding it is that it came out too late in the year, but I don't understand why it would get nominated for anything if it came out too late.
That's the only thing. Rian Johnson, like he wasn't even nominated for director.
Like I said, you guys know how we feel about The Last Jedi. I did not like The Last Jedi that much at first. I didn't hate it as much as most people on the internet did, but I have come around on it, and it's now one of my top 5 favorite Star Wars movies. And I've liked every other movie that Rian Johnson has done, particularly like Brick and Looper. But Knives Out is my favorite Rian Johnson movie by far. It's not even close. And I think that a lot of it was them not wanting to put him in the running for something after the Last Jedi controversy, even though that movie came out in like 2018. Like that's unfair. It's unfair, but I have to think that it played at least somewhat of a role in their consideration of including Knives Out, because it just feels kind of personal to only give him the nod for the screenplay when there were so many good actors and when everything else about it was so good.
The main girl, I think Ana de Armas is her name. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but she was fantastic.
Yeah,
and even Chris Evans, I mean, amazing. Like, you're used to seeing him just punching people, but like he was great in this role. He was so perfect.
Yeah,
for it.
Ana de Armas and Chris Evans both were probably my 2 favorite characters in the movie because they had really satisfying character arcs and really good character development. So that's why, personally, if I was going to give the screenplay award to somebody, I would have given it to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because Tarantino knows how to write a movie unlike any other director or writer in Hollywood, in my opinion.
He's probably one of the best, if not the best.
Rian Johnson's sort of developing a style, but Tarantino's had a style since the 90s. He's established, and his style has never really changed all that much. He's tried different genres of movies, like he's done westerns now. He did like Django Unchained. He's done a war movie, but he mostly does like...
He's multifaceted. He can write any kind of setting, and he'll nail it.
That's why I truly want him, before he decides to retire, I truly would love to see what a Quentin Tarantino horror movie looks like, and he's teased that idea for a long time.
What's the closest he's gotten to that out of his movies?
I mean, some of his movies are like, they have like frightening parts to them, but none of them are really horror movies. Like, you could almost say some of his movies are like more close to like a horror show, like just shocking. But he's never really actually done a true horror movie. He does tension really well. He does dialogue very well. But yeah, Parasite was the winner for this, which it's going to sound like I'm shitting all over Parasite throughout this.
We enjoyed it. It just wasn't our movie of the year.
It wasn't our movie of the year. I'm very happy that Bong Joon-ho won, and we'll get more into that later. As you'll see towards the end, I kind of had an idea of how the Oscars were going to play out, which is why I went to bed at 10:30 instead of staying up till 11:30 to watch all of them. But I talked to Aaron about this the other day, and we're kind of in agreement about it. But I don't understand how that movie has a 99 on Rotten Tomatoes, but Knives Out and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood don't. And especially considering that I think I might even like Snowpiercer about the same, or maybe even a little bit more than Parasite. And that was Bong Joon-ho's movie before this. I can't remember if he's done something between now and then, but he also, like, Aaron said that he's seen all of Bong Joon-ho's movies, and they're all the exact same thing. They all deal with that class structure narrative, and...
I mean, it's a big thing in Korea, so I get that. It's a big thing, like, in Asian countries, the class systems, and... you basically, once you're born into it, you really have a hard time getting out of it. So I get that's a big thing there, and that's like his main focus, you know?
Yeah, I'm very happy that he won and swept the board, because it kind of changed what our expectations for future Oscars awards are going to be like, because now, like, it's possible for anybody to win.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always good to have more representation, especially in Hollywood, where these people are put in the spotlight more than just your average Joe. But as a movie goer and as a humongous fan of Knives Out and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I felt that those two movies got the shaft this year in a major way that really upset me. But yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm
sorry.
Like, I told Aaron, I said I expected 1917 to sweep all these categories, or most of them, because let's be honest, the people who vote on these movies are white men, and white men just absolutely cream their pants over war movies.
And there weren't too many people of color nominated, unfortunately, because
there was only one, I think, actually, and
that was in the actress category.
Yeah,
that was it.
But we're venturing too far off from the beaten path here.
Anyway,
we have a lot else we could say later. But so Bong Joon-ho won for Best Original Screenplay. So the next award we're going to look at here is Best Adapted Screenplay. So this is like when somebody takes a book and turns it into a movie script and adapts it.
Isn't it also, too, if like it's based on history, or is it just on books?
I don't know. Books are primarily the source of these, and I think, like... I'm not 100% sure how Joker is an adapted screenplay, because I don't think there's like a book for it or anything. But maybe they're just talking about comic books. I guess. I
remember when they announced the nomination for this, or like the Joker, the character created by, I can't remember who was the guy who created the Joker and the Batman and Batman.
Is it Bob Kane?
I think they mentioned him and someone else.
But
maybe two other people, I can't remember. But I think that's how they announced that.
I'll read the nominees here for Best Adapted Screenplay. So you have The Irishman, you have Jojo Rabbit, you have Joker, you have Little Women, and you have The Two Popes, which was the Anthony Hopkins movie on Netflix. Jojo Rabbit was the winner of this, which Christa and I were very excited about. Speaking of representation, seeing New Zealander Taika Waititi being a winner. I have been following his work since What We Do in the Shadows, not the show, the movie, the original vampire comedy. I still haven't seen the show yet. I know he's not in it, but I know he has a heavy-handed involvement in that show, so I need to see it. But he also did a fantastic job with Thor Ragnarok. I think Thor Ragnarok is one of the better Marvel movies. Like, it's probably in my top 5 of all time.
I never put the two and two together. I just knew him from the vampire movie. I had no idea about Thor. And then when we started watching Jojo Rabbit, which we recently just watched the other day, I'm like, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the guy from Into the Shadows or whatever. And I'm like, What We Do in the Shadows? Yeah, that's what I meant. But I was very shocked. I just never pictured him in a role like where he was actually writing and directing.
So it's funny because Todd Phillips is the director of Joker and the writer of the script and all that, and he actually got his start with The Hangover and like a bunch of dumb comedies like that. And so Taika Waititi is kind of having the same career trajectory now as like a Todd Phillips, where he like started out making dumb comedies and now he's like getting into more serious stuff. So I think in the past it's proven that it can go one of two ways. It's either somebody makes the transition from comedy to drama very well, or they don't. And I think in both these cases, we haven't seen Joker yet, full disclosure, but I've heard it's pretty hit and miss and it's kind of all over the place, and comic book fans especially aren't very satisfied with it. But I think I'm unable to isolate the two in my brain, so that's what's holding me off from watching it. We have it, and we could, watch it, put it on and watch it at any point, but it's hard for me to not think of the word Joker and not think of my favorite, like Mark Hamill, like doing the voice of the Joker from the Batman animated series and the Batman video games.
Or Heath Ledger.
But I get that this, and Heath Ledger especially, but anyway, we'll talk more about that later when we talk about Joaquin Phoenix and all that, but...
The only one that I would have liked to have seen, even though I'm very happy for Taika Waititi, I really would have loved to see Little Women get this, because I know you haven't seen either version, but like Greta Gerwig did such a brilliant job of writing this and directing this, and she hardly got anything for it. So it kind of bummed me out, but you know.
She should have been nominated for Best Director at least. I mean, I've only seen Lady Bird of her work, I believe.
And I've only seen part of Lady Bird, so I really can't say.
Wasn't she she was an actor and stuff too, wasn't she?
Possibly. I haven't, done like a research on her.
I'm gonna look into that really quick here and see.
I didn't know her husband was Noah Baumbach, and he wrote Marriage Story, which he was nominated for.
Yeah.
I did not know they were married, which surprised me. But,
so yeah, she's been an actor in quite a few things, actually. She has 40 acting credits on IMDb. She did a voice in Isle of Dogs. She was in 20th Century Women.
Okay.
She was in a couple episodes of The Mindy Project.
Okay.
She was in Portlandia, How I Met Your Dad.
That's cool.
There's something I'm like... Oh, she was the main character in The House of the Devil.
I have no idea what that is.
I think you watched that horror movie with me, didn't you? Or maybe I watched it by myself.
I don't know.
It's a really good low budget horror movie from 2009 called The House of the Devil. It's a
oh, maybe I have. I've seen part of it.
She takes a babysitting job, and it's like that.
No, I haven't seen it. Never mind.
Yeah, we'll watch that probably. We'll probably watch that when Halloween rolls back around this year. But that is one of the most severely underrated horror movies I've seen in a long time. I think it's sitting at 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb. I think it needs to be higher because it was a great movie. But yeah, she was one of the main actors in that movie. Not the main. I had it wrong. She's not the main actress, but she was in it for sure. She played Megan in that movie.
And to clarify too, for Taika Waititi, he is the very first person of Maori descent to win an Oscar,
which is cool.
That means he's from New Zealand. He's also Jewish, and if you haven't seen Jojo Rabbit, it's about World War II and Nazis and the Holocaust and.
So it's kind of like it's a satiric look at like Hitler is the boy's imaginary friend in Jojo Rabbit.
And that's who he plays.
And he plays Hitler himself. He's a Jewish man. And my favorite thing about this movie is he kept getting asked this question in interviews of like, you're Jewish, why in the hell would you want to play Hitler in a movie? And his response was something along the lines of, oh, it's simple, really. It's the biggest fuck you that I could ever do to that guy.
Because he would absolutely, if Hitler was alive, he would absolutely hate that, a Jewish person. And especially a person who is of color, too.
Yeah, he wouldn't want anybody playing his role in a movie other than himself, but especially a Jewish person. He would have lost his fucking mind, which is fucking amazing. But anyway, so that's that. The best adapted screenplay goes to Jojo Rabbit. Seek out Jojo Rabbit. I'm sure it'll be on streaming services within the next couple months for you guys to watch.
It's a definite must-watch because...
It's really quirky. It's got the style of like a Wes Anderson movie at first.
It's adorable in parts too.
And it's actually a pretty cute movie, and it like brings color and light and hope to Nazi Germany, which is something that not a lot of movies can do. So that was really awesome. But anyway, the next award is Achievement in Visual Effects. So the nominees for that are Avengers Endgame, The Irishman, The Lion King, 1917, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. So I thought for a while, I was like, why would The Irishman be nominated for visual effects? And it's because of the aging that they did on the characters.
Especially with Joe Pesci.
And we'll talk more about The Irishman later when we get to the editing category, but 1917 is the winner of the visual effects, and personally, I think that it's a good choice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really had any competition.
Yeah, Avengers and Star Wars, of course, look good, but 1917, it was heavily CGI'd, but it did not feel that way as you're watching it. Not to mention that it was shot by Sam Mendes as one long, continuous shot.
Well, this is how I see it, too. Avengers and Star Wars, those were automatically going to be CGI'd. With 1917, they actually had to film it and then add effects and stuff like that. So I felt like, that was fair. Ultimately, so
yeah, that was a good pick for that one, I thought. The next one is Achievement in Sound Mixing. So Aaron did a thing for work where they took like not bets, I guess, but like guesses on who they thought was going to win, and Aaron actually flip-flopped these next two. So they're sound mixing and sound editing, and they're kind of hard to differentiate between, but we'll do sound mixing first. So Achievement in Sound Mixing nominees were Ad Astra, the Brad Pitt space movie that I still haven't seen, Ford versus Ferrari, which is the Matt Damon, Christian Bale car movie.
I really want to see that still.
Joker, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and 1917 won again, which is easy to see why, considering that it's a war movie, and so war movies need to have good sound mixing. And this movie in particular, I saw it in theaters, and it had a really good mix of sound, whether quiet or loud, booming explosions. It did both those very well.
Do you know the difference between editing and mixing? I know I've looked it up before. I don't know the exact difference.
We'd have to look it up to see the exact difference, but so sound editing, the nominees for that one were Ford versus Ferrari, Joker, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. And Ford versus Ferrari won for sound editing. So
it's a car movie.
So it makes sense. Car movies and war movies usually do typically pretty well in Oscars for sound, but Aaron flipped them, and I can see where he went astray there, because when you think about sound mixing, it's like them adding the car effects afterwards, kind of, and the way you'd make sounds like cars sound good in a movie, versus sound editing, where war movie you'd think there'd be more editing to the sound, but they're flip flopped. So
I found the definition. So sound editing is the collection and placement of all the sounds from a movie. With mixing, it's blending all the levels and tonality of the sounds, dialogue, sound effects, and music. So it's just how differentiate the sounds are. That's mixing. And this contrast, like an explosion and someone talking, and making sure the volumes aren't all crazy, I guess. I think that's the gist of that. But I guess it makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah.
So we'll kind of go through the next couple pretty quick, because I don't think we've seen any of these ones. Best live action short film nominees. We haven't seen any of these. Cool thing that Cinemark is doing this time of year is they're actually showing all of these movies together in one theater experience if you want to go see them. I don't know if they're still playing. It might have just been the week leading up to the Oscars that they were doing it, but I did notice when we were looking at movie times for Birds of Prey, which we saw this past weekend and really enjoyed. And we'll talk more about that later too. But best live action short film nominees were Brotherhood, Nefta Football Club, The Neighbor's Window, Saria, however you say it, and Saria, and then A Sister. And The Neighbor's Window won that one by Marshall Curry. And we haven't seen any of those, so we'll just move on to the next category, which was best animated short film. Christa knows more about this one, so I'll let her talk about it. But animated short films, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation probably, but it's Desera, which is daughter, Hair Love, Kit Bull, Memorable, and Sister. And Hair Love was the winner for this one. And I'll let Christa talk about why Hair Love as the best animated short film is a significant thing for this year's Oscars.
I technically haven't seen all of it. I've seen a part of it. But it's basically this dad trying to figure out how to style his daughter's hair. And, they're black. And it's just a short celebrating black hair and stuff like that. And the guy who wrote this, it was written by two people, but the one guy who wrote this is actually from Akron. He graduated from Akron, and I just thought that was great, And the speech that they had given, you watched that part. They gave the speech that they gave for that. It's we need to normalize black hair and not see it as this alien thing, It's just hair. But yeah, I've seen parts of Kit Bull. Kit Bull is really sad. But other than that, I really don't have much to say. But I just really think Hair Love deserved it, and I'm glad it won. So, anywho.
Yeah, so that's pretty much, that's all we have to say about the short films. And then now we have Achievement in Production Design nominees. So the nominees for this one were The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. So finally, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood wins something for production design, which I think is appropriate for this. I could have seen it going the way of 1917 or Jojo Rabbit for sure.
Jojo Rabbit, I thought would have had the chance.
But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I'm really happy it won something like this, because when you think about it, making a movie about Hollywood isn't exactly the easiest thing in the world to do, because they had to make sets, sets of a set, every movie set they made was like Inception, you know what I mean?
Nope,
we're gonna shut it all down now. Inception. Nope. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood blended the movie making process with I don't know how to word it. But
so do you want to explain what production design is? Because technically there was two people that won the award for this. Yeah,
so there's production design and set decoration. So it was Barbara Ling and Nancy Haig. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what goes into design. Is obviously your sets have to look good, and they have to be decorated.
Like, the production design is just like how they want it to look, like the vibe they want to give off, and the set decorations obviously like how they're going to actually make a scene, how they're going to decorate a scene. So, and that takes a lot of work, especially if you're doing a movie set in a time. Like, this was obviously set in the late 60s, and that's a very iconic time in Hollywood, so you want to make it look like it's 1969 Hollywood.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they absolutely nailed the look and feel of that golden era of Hollywood, the end of it, actually, the end of the golden age of Hollywood. And that's one of my favorite times in history.
That was perfect for it, too.
So I don't know why this dumbass list jumps to Best Picture immediately after this. It's like really weird.
I mean, do you want to do that, or do you want to save that for last?
No, we're gonna save that for last. You just have to remind me to go back to it if I don't remember. So then, why would you put that in the middle of the list? That's such a weird choice. Okay, so the next award is Achievement in Music Written for Motion Pictures, Original Song nominees. So these are artists or bands or groups or singers, whatever you want to call them, songs that were written for a movie, not just a song that was put in a movie. It was written for that movie. So the nominees are I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away from Toy Story 4 by Randy Newman, I'm Gonna Love Me Again from Rocket Man by Elton John, I'm Standing With You from Breakthrough by Diane Warren, Into the Unknown from Frozen 2 that was performed by Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez, and I'm assuming music and lyrics by and then performed by Idina Menzel.
Sung by Idina Menzel.
And then Stand Up from Harriet. So yeah, we have, and that was written by Joshua Bryan Campbell and Cynthia Erivo, whatever the fuck. So Rocket Man was the winner for this one. We still haven't seen that one yet either. We need to, but yeah, Elton John, I caught the tail end of his performance of that, and it was pretty good.
It's really hard to beat Elton John.
One of the podcasts that I listen to, the Ralph Report, every day actually, it comes out Monday through Friday, but they cover they have a bit of their podcast. It's mostly just about entertainment news is what that whole podcast is about, but they don't actually cover the showbiz news till the end. And they pointed out that Elton John really seems like he's packing it in. And of course he's getting ready to retire and he's earned the right to. He's a fucking absolute legend. But it was kind of sad to see him having to read the lyrics off of something, and when he performs at concerts now, he has to have a teleprompter with the words and stuff. And it's just he picked a good time to retire if that's the case, but it's just kind of sad for people that maybe this is their first and only time seeing him, and they have to see him in that kind of condition performing. But
yeah, I mean, I also we haven't seen Toy Story 4 yet, but I love that song. I've heard that song a couple times.
Yeah, I haven't seen Frozen 2 yet either, which I need to.
Yeah, Into the Unknown is great.
As somebody who didn't really care for the first Frozen, I've heard the second one is even better than the first one. So,
and to further that, they always do the performances during the Oscars of this. And for the Frozen 2 song, they had singers that sang all the dub versions in other countries. And that was really cool. And they had them all on stage with Idina Menzel, which I thought was pretty cool. So
the next one is another achievement in music written for motion pictures, but this is for original score. So this is the background music, and I happen to love movie and video game scores. I actually have a whole playlist on Spotify. I think I have almost 1,000 songs in that thing now of all my favorite soundtracks and songs from soundtracks. I think the score is just as important as actual songs because they really
it sets the tone.
Yeah, it sets the tone for the movie if done correctly. So the original score nominees are for Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, and Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker, and Joker 1. Haven't seen it yet, so can't comment on it. But 1917 had a really good soundtrack, but it wasn't super memorable. It was just kind of pretty typical war stuff. Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker, of course, John Williams is a legend, but
it's just iconic.
Honestly, though, outside of the opening credits crawl, there wasn't really any music from Rise of Skywalker that stood out to me an awful lot in this one. But
it's also too. She's the first. This was a woman who won. She's from Iceland, so that's why her name is really hard to pronounce. I think it's Hildur Guðnadóttir. Oh gosh, I butchered that. But she's the first woman to win in that category for composer. So that was really cool.
We said at the beginning, we cannot deny the lack of representation that the Oscars have had before, so it's very refreshing to see women being nominated and winning, at least some,
and then people of color
people of
winning.
color winning, and yeah, Bong Joon-ho winning a lot for Parasite. But it's hard to separate my anger as a moviegoer and a big fan of the other movies that didn't get nominated. But I'm not going to be the typical angry white man on the internet that's mad at the Asian movie for winning. Do you know what I mean? Like,
and also too, it doesn't take our enjoyment from the movie either.
No, it was still a good movie. I think I'm always going to kind of wonder how that movie is perfect for most people. Like, because I did have some issues with it that I won't get into.
And just in general, all the movies that we enjoyed this year does not take our enjoyment from them.
Yeah,
even though we would love to have seen them win more, does not take the fact that we love those movies.
For sure.
So.
For sure. Okay, well, the next one is makeup and hairstyling. So the nominees for this one were Bombshell, which is the Fox News movie. Joker, Judy, which is the Renee Zellweger playing Judy Garland movie. Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, the Angelina Jolie Disney movie that was apparently a sack of shit. And then 1917. So Bombshell won for this one, and I have to say it's pretty disappointing. The Bombshell won. I haven't seen it, but somebody on Twitter the night of the Oscars summed it up pretty well. They were just like, I think you're the one who showed me the tweet or the Facebook status update about it, but it was like, oh great, someone made skinny white women look like other skinny white women.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I think Judy should have won, because to make Renee Zellweger, to make her look like Judy Garland took a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And she I've seen like the stuff that they showed at the Oscars, and she looked exactly like her.
Yeah, for sure.
So more than anything, that should have gotten it, in my opinion.
Yeah, so maybe once we watch Bombshell, we'll understand if there was something revolutionary going on with the makeup and hairstyling. But I think it just won because of what it was. But yeah. And then the next one is Best International Feature Film of the Year. And if you've been following Hollywood at all this year, you knew Parasite was going to take this. And if it didn't, then anything else was going to be a major upset. But the nominees were Corpus Christi, which was a Polish movie. Honeyland, which is a North Macedonia movie, which is a documentary that's on Hulu right now about people that go up into the mountains and like they're like beekeepers, and it's about like their whole village and their whole way of life.
And that's like their whole livelihood.
And it's their whole livelihood is bees and beekeeping and honey, and they live off of like the honey and stuff, and it seems very fascinating. So out of all these nominees, I thought that Honeyland might have a chance of upsetting Parasite, but like a very, very small chance, and it did not, because Parasite won. But then there was a French adaptation of Les Miserables this year that was also nominated, and then Pain and Glory, which was a Spanish movie. So like we said...
Wasn't Antonio Banderas in that?
Yeah, Pain and Glory was the Antonio Banderas movie. I don't know much about it, so that's why I wasn't going to talk about it. But Parasite won Best International Film of the Year. No big surprise there. And then the next one is Achievement in Film Editing. This is the one that I haven't seen, Ford versus Ferrari, which was the winner of this one, but I really wanted The Irishman to win. So the nominees were Ford versus Ferrari, which was the winner, and then The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, and Parasite. So the reason why I wanted The Irishman to be the winner of film editing was because it's a nearly 4-hour movie. It's over 3.5 hours. It's like 3 hours and 45 minutes. And not only is Martin Scorsese like one of the best at like pacing a movie to not be super boring. I mean, they're slow and they're like really slow burn, but like all of his mob movies are so fucking iconic and good. And The Irishman is no exception, if you ask me at least. But they effortlessly switch between past and present in a way that was not only interesting but effective. And I think when you talk about film editing, like a lot of movies try to switch between past and present and don't do that well with it. And I think this movie did exceptionally well with the past and present elements. And that's why I wanted it to win. So as far as I know, Ford versus Ferrari might do the same thing. I think some of it takes place in the past and some of it's in the present. So maybe that's why it won. But
yeah, honestly, I thought the nominees were kind of off, especially with Parasite and I don't know. It just, some of it, like, it didn't feel right.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's all subjective, and there's a committee of people that vote on these, and I guess they know what they're doing, even though I don't agree with them most of the time. But
I just don't understand how that one won over like The Irishman or Jojo Rabbit, really, because Jojo Rabbit editing was fantastic.
It was good, but I don't like. Again, I think Parasite was just nominated for a bunch of shit just because I didn't think the editing was really anything that remarkable in that movie. But maybe I don't have the eye for it like people have or something. But
I don't know.
And then the next one is another category that we know nothing about and haven't seen any of these, so we'll just skate through it real quick. It's Best Documentary Short Subject, so I'm assuming what that would mean is just like a shorter documentary than a feature film-length documentary. So in the absence, learning to skateboard in a war zone if you're a girl, life overtakes me, St. Louis Superman, and walk, run, cha-cha. And learning to skateboard in a war zone, parentheses, if you're a girl, was the winner of this one.
I really actually want to see that. It does look good.
It does seem very interesting. And then Best Documentary Feature nominees. Honeyland was actually nominated for this, so I misspoke earlier. I thought that was the international film was the only one it was nominated for, but it was also nominated for documentary. The other nominees were For Sama or For Sama, The Edge of Democracy, The Cave, and American Factory. And American Factory actually won this, and it's a documentary that's on Netflix right now. And I'm going to let Christa talk about this one because she's seen it and I have not.
So I did not know anything about this until they had announced the winner. But this is set in Dayton, Ohio, which, I was born there. And it's about a factory that closed, the GM factories that closed in Ohio, and how much that affected the economy in Ohio. And they reopened the factory as a different company, as a glass factory company from China. And it's just basically a documentary about how they clashed, like the cultures clashed, and how much the workers were kind of screwed over, and the economy, like everybody's state of mind. I think, in fact, too, if I misspeak, I'm sorry, but I think this was a documentary that was sponsored by the Obamas.
Yeah.
Because on Netflix, there's like a 10-minute like short after the documentary is over, and it's the directors of the documentary and Barack and Michelle talking to each other about it. And it's just very, very fascinating. So and also too, if you're not pro-union, then you're not pro-workers. I mean, it's just a fact, and that's like the big thing about this documentary.
Yeah.
But I won't keep going on and on about it. But if you care about the economy and if you care about politics, you need to watch this for sure.
Absolutely, and I'm gonna have to check it out at some point myself. And the next award was Achievement in Directing, so basically Best Director. The nominees were Martin Scorsese for The Irishman, Todd Phillips for The Joker, Sam Mendes for 1917, Quentin Tarantino for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, who I wanted to win, but he did not because Bong Joon-ho, as mentioned before, won for Parasite. And at this point in the night, once he won for director and once it had won for best international movie and won for something else, I was like, I think this movie is going to sweep the other categories. And sure enough, for the big ones, it really did. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But Aaron made a good point. Aaron made a good point with saying that Bong Joon-ho's movies are all very similar in style and tone and thematic elements. And I think the reason why this movie did so well is because it was the first of his movies to be like, I guess I can't speak to if his other movies were a commercial success or not, but they were definitely a lot lower key. Like, I know Snowpiercer was a movie and it got its own TV show now and stuff, but Snowpiercer was very under the radar when it first came out. Like, I remember it being crazy that most Blu-rays nowadays are like $20, $25, $30, and when Snowpiercer came out, I believe it was a $10 Blu-ray. And that was unheard of even back then, which that was probably like 5 years ago maybe or so when that movie came out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Parasite just seems like Bong Joon-ho finally making his best movie that he can make with styles that he's already used in other movies.
I know you didn't watch his speech for this because you went to sleep before this category came up. But he was he has to have a translator. He doesn't speak English. But he was so grateful. He even gave a huge shout out to Scorsese. Scorsese was like his biggest inspiration in his early days. And he just went on about Tarantino. And he just I was just so honored to be a part of this category because I never thought I'd make it. Basically what he said. So, he's very grateful and that's fine. And he's the first person of color and person of Asian descent to win in this category, if I'm not mistaken. So good on him. So it's fine. I would have loved to see Tarantino win, but
it is what it is. Yep. So the next one is Achievement in Costume Design, and the nominees for this one were The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And Little Women won for this one.
The only thing it won.
Which, I kind of expected it, given that Greta Gerwig wasn't even nominated for director. I kind of expected Little Women to get the shaft, but...
I mean, I think this was kind of like a gimme because this movie is set in Civil War times, so they kind of had the upper hand.
Yeah.
in that regard, but it was great. I mean, everything about that movie is great, and the costuming is great. So
I thought the only other ones that would have given it any competition would have been Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which, like, you know, pretty standard, like 60s, 70s outfits, but they nailed it
or
as
Jojo
usual.
Rabbit, even.
And Jojo Rabbit was like I said, it was weird to see a Nazi Germany World War II movie that was colorful.
Very colorful.
It was very colorful, yeah. So I think in general, I think that might have deserved it even a little bit more than Little Women, but I'm glad Little Women won something. The next one is achievement in cinematography. We could go back and forth all day on what your definition of cinematography is, so we won't do that. The nominees were The Irishman, Joker, The Lighthouse, which, if you know anything about me, The Lighthouse was in my top 5 movies of last year, and this is the only thing it was nominated for. Had a genuinely unique black and white style, and it was shot in, like, I can't think of what aspect ratio that is, where it's like square box. Like, it's not widescreen, it was like a square box, but I can't think of what the hell that's called. But 1917 and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood were the other 2 nominees, and 1917 won. I think it got cinematography based on the fact that it was a one-shot movie. It was designed to look like it was one continuous camera shot. There were only a couple times where they broke that. Like, there's a part where he's, like, chasing this guy into this building, and he falls and he blacks out, and the screen goes to black, and then it fades right back in. But you can tell that's, like, obviously their opportunity to take a camera cut. But other than that, I think if it had not been... Because I love 1917. It's, like, in my top 5 favorite war movies of all time now, because it was different and enough. But I think if it had not been for the one continuous shot style that Sam Mendes was going for, I think that it would be a pretty basic war movie other than that.
And this was a loaded category, too, because Once Upon a Time in Hollywood could have gotten it very easily. The Irishman.
Joker, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just like a toss-up. Anybody could have gotten it.
I think I'm very happy that The Lighthouse even got nominated because of how low-key that movie was. At this point, I will watch absolutely anything that A24 as a studio puts out because they just keep cranking out good movies that are in my all-time favorites. And The Lighthouse is...
You love Robert Pattinson now.
Robert Pattinson, yeah. So, holy fuck, man. Like, okay, I remember my mom dragging me to theaters to see damn near every Twilight movie, and I just can't explain enough what a 180 I've done on this gentleman, because he was just nothing. Like, him and Kristen Stewart were perfect for each other because they just were nothing actors. Like, they gave nothing, and I got nothing from their performances as actors.
No.
Kristen Stewart especially has still kept that tradition up from what I heard. Like, she was just in that underwater movie, which, like, surprisingly...
And she was in that, Charlie's Angels, too.
Yeah, which that doesn't even interest me whatsoever. I would, like, watch that if it was on Netflix or something, but I would never actually seek that one out. But I'm curious to see Underwater because it's got some, like, horror elements to it, and the idea of, like, being that far underwater scares the shit out of me, so it seems like it might be okay. But anyway, the fact that The Lighthouse was nominated at all, and the fact that it's sharing the company of these other, like, fantastic movies is an honor in and of itself, I guess. But it's just, it felt like a tease to feel like it got nominated. And I, like, when I saw it come up, I was like, man, it's not gonna fucking win. Like, especially against 1917 and Joker, it's not gonna win. But it's just, I'm very happy it got represented somehow, because if these were my awards, I would have nominated it for Best Director, because I did not like Robert Eggers' first movie, The Witch, and this has made me do a 180 on Robert Eggers as well.
And, if anything, Robert Pattinson or
Willem Dafoe
should have gotten nominated.
They should have been nominated for like actor or supporting actor, because they were absolutely method and fantastic in this movie. So if you want to hear me gush more about The Lighthouse, be sure to listen to, I believe it's episode 2 of the ANG cast, where Alex and I did our top of 2019. And I think by the time we got to our movies, my voice might have already been gone, but because we did a 3.5-hour podcast. But anyway, if I don't stop talking about The Lighthouse, that's going to be the rest of this fucking podcast. So I'm going to keep going. So Best Animated Feature Film of the Year. Nominees were How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, I Lost My Body, Klaus?
I think it's Claus. I think it's just Claus.
Or it might be Klaus, I don't know, because it's spelled with a K. Klaus.
I don't know.
Missing Link and Toy Story 4, which we haven't seen Toy Story 4 yet. We've been kind of holding out for Disney Plus for that one, which it should be on there soon, I believe.
I mean, there was really no competition to me because it's Toy Story.
Well, the thing is, though, what were the last awards before this? The Golden Globes? Didn't Missing Link win the Golden Globe over Toy Story 4?
Maybe.
I'm pretty sure it did. It won.
You might be right.
It won
I
something.
don't know. We'd have to
Because I remember we were watching, we're like, what the fuck is Missing Link and how did it beat Toy Story or even How to Train Your Dragon? Like, if you think Toy Story was going to lose to anything, you'd think it'd be How to Train Your Dragon. Now, granted, I don't know what the hell Missing Link is, but Toy Story 4 was the expected winner of this. So in the next category, we have performance by an actress in a supporting role. So we're starting to get into the nitty gritty here, the major categories of the Oscars every year. So we have Kathy Bates and Richard Jewell. I believe she played Richard Jewell's mother in that.
I don't know anything about that movie.
Well, it's directed by Clint Eastwood, who is a huge Trump supporter and has started to make his movies very Republican political. So I probably am never going to watch this just because I can't fucking stand it. But I don't know.
That's unfortunate.
This movie, I think, has a very Republican tone to it, but it's about like a guy that is like being... I guess framed might not be the right word. I don't know that much about it because as soon as I found out Clint Eastwood was involved. Listen, Clint Eastwood was a great actor back in the day. He's been in some of the best spaghetti western movies of all time. But I can't really side with any Republicans anymore, and I really don't want to support any of his work if that's how he's going to be, if he's going to be a Trump supporter. So, yeah. But anyway, yeah. Kathy Bates and Richard Jewell as his mother for supporting actress. And then we have Laura Dern in Marriage Story, which she was Scarlett Johansson's counselor or
we haven't really talked about that.
Mediator. Mediator is the word.
No, lawyer. She was the lawyer.
Really? Okay.
Yes. We haven't really talked about that movie.
We can talk about it a little bit after I read these. And then Scarlett Johansson and Jojo Rabbit. So she actually did a double dip this year on the Oscars. She was nominated for her role in Marriage Story. And she was nominated for supporting actress as the kid's mom in Jojo Rabbit. And then Florence Pugh in Little Women. I have not seen Little Women yet, but you guys know how much I love Midsommar. Midsommar I loved even more than The Lighthouse last year, and she was fantastic in Midsommar. It almost makes me mad that, like, I get that she was likely very good in Little Women, but it almost makes me mad, like, with The Lighthouse. Like, I wish Midsommar could have been nominated for something, but that's just not the way.
It's frustrating to see the Oscars not nominate good horror movies like Midsommar.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, if that was an Oscar movie, that could have been an Oscar easily.
Very true. And then the final supporting role actress is Margot Robbie in Bombshell. So the winner of this was Laura Dern in Marriage Story. We actually literally just watched Marriage Story on Netflix last night because we knew we were going to be recording this podcast.
It was very good.
It was very good. What's the director's name?
Noah Baumbach.
Yeah, Noah Baumbach. There's only one of his other movies.
Directed it.
Yeah, I've been slightly interested in seeing his other work throughout the years, but this was the first movie of his that I had watched. I kind of want to go back and watch The Squid and the Whale and Greenberg with Ben Stiller and While We're Young with Ben Stiller and some of those other movies that he's done. But yeah, Laura Dern was... I don't quite understand why she got nominated for this and why she won it, furthermore, because her role in this movie, I get that, like, supporting role doesn't mean like a direct role, but she was in it a pretty small amount even for a supporting actress. And I feel like Florence Pugh should have gotten the nod, or Scarlett Johansson as the kid's mom in Jojo Rabbit was also good. But I digress.
But Marriage Story was really good. If you don't know anything about it, Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson are the main people in this, and it's just about how basically a marriage falls apart.
Yeah.
And how it snowballs, especially when there's a kid involved.
This movie isn't for everybody. Like, I think Alex's fiance...
I think it could be triggering, too.
I think Alex's fiance Tiffany watched this, and she was not that crazy about it. It is pretty slow. Like, it's a 2.5 hour long movie, roughly. A little bit less than that, but it's a pretty slow burn, but I think it reached about as satisfying of a conclusion as it possibly could. But anyway,
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I liked it. It's like a solid 7 or 8 out of 10 for me. It's like up there with Parasite as being like, it didn't change my life. It didn't revolutionize the genre, but it was a good one of those.
This is the only thing it got anything for. So
yeah, which I kind of knew that going in, like going up against this other stiff competition, it wasn't going to win. But Adam
Driver could have gotten the award for actor because I think he was the best part of that movie. Personally,
he was fantastic. Honestly, he's come a long way. But anyway, and then we have performance by an actress in a leading role. So straying away from a supporting role to leading role now. We have Cynthia Erivo in Harriet, Scarlett Johansson in Marriage Story. I literally butcher her fucking name every time. Is it Saoirse Ronan?
Yes.
Saoirse Ronan in Little Women, Charlize Theron in Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger in Judy, and she won for that, which I haven't seen Judy. Actually, the only movie I've seen out of this category is Marriage Story, and I want to see the other ones pretty badly. But yeah, she looked like she did a pretty convincing Judy Garland for sure.
Judy Garland had it rough if you don't know anything about her. So
she did for sure. That time in Hollywood was rough for a bunch of actors and actresses, especially actresses. And she was definitely one of them. A lot of people, I don't think, really followed her much after Wizard of Oz, unfortunately.
And she was a child actor too, so that also plays a role in how you handle your fame.
It turns out that can really fuck a person up, and she's a pretty prime example of that for sure.
Yeah.
And then now we have the actor. So we just did the supporting actress and lead actress. Now we have the supporting actor nominees. This was the most confusing thing of the night for me until somebody at work clarified this for me, because Tom Hanks in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, this is a movie about Mr. Rogers. And I just kept thinking, like, how the fuck are you going to say that Tom Hanks is the supporting actor in the movie about Mr. Rogers if he's playing Mr. Rogers? But supposedly the movie, I haven't seen the movie yet. The movie is about somebody writing a book or doing something, like making a movie or writing a book or something about Mr. Rogers. Him? So I think that guy is technically the main character of the movie.
I just remember we were watching this, because this is usually the first award given. You were literally so confused for you kept talking about it for about 10 or 15 minutes straight.
Well, yeah, I just couldn't get over it. I'm like, in a movie about Mr. Rogers, the guy who plays Mr. Rogers, Tom Hanks of all people, gets supporting role. It's mind-blowing to me. But
also, fun tidbit, he's actually distantly related to Fred Rogers.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a cool piece of trivia. So anyway, these are supporting actor roles. So Tom Hanks with The Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, the Mr. Rogers movie, Anthony Hopkins in The Two Popes, Al Pacino in The Irishman, Joe Pesci in The Irishman, and Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And thank fucking God he won. I was really nervous because, man, look at these actors that he was up against. These are some of Hollywood's absolute finest, especially.
If anybody else should have taken it, should have been Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci was Al Pacino as
Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa in The Irishman was really good. A lot of that was mostly just makeup work and stuff to make him look like Jimmy Hoffa. I personally thought Joe Pesci was better in The Irishman than Al Pacino was, but I'm so happy Brad Pitt finally won. It's insane to me that this man has gone as long as he has in Hollywood without winning an acting Oscar, but here we are. He was
just so grateful, too.
He was very grateful. He made the comments about the recent political climate, which I absolutely loved. He's never been one to shy away from that. You want me to say it? Yeah, sure.
He's like, well, I only have 45 seconds to give my speech, which is more than they gave John Bolton in the Senate last week.
Which, if you don't know what's going on, we won't get too political in this podcast, but they basically didn't let the witnesses testify, and yeah, so.
And a lot of people are upset about it, but he also gave a shout out to Leo. And he said, I'd ride your coattails any day, man, which I thought was really sweet.
That was very, very sweet of him. Those two were perfect. I would watch so many movies of them together, like a buddy comedy or something stupid like that. They were so good. They
fed off each other so well.
They were very, they were convincing in a way like you believed it. It seemed like he had been his stunt double for years, not just for this movie. It seemed like they had been working together for years, which I guess in a way is true because they kind of came up in Hollywood together in a way.
And he also gave a shout out to stunt crews and stuntmen because they don't usually get a lot of.
They don't, for sure. So this movie was cool because it put the spotlight on him as a stunt double, which is not something that you see too often.
And stunt people are also known for getting hurt and killed all the time.
Yeah.
And for not them to get any kind of notoriety because they do all this tough stuff that actors either don't want to do or, can't do or whatever.
Yeah.
And they deserve just as much credit sometimes as the actors. So that was really cool. That was a cool speech. I was really happy. It's his first acting Oscar, and he deserved it
for sure. I love Brad Pitt. So we are down to our final two categories of the Oscars. We are now at performance by an actor in a leading role. We have Antonio Banderas in Pain and Glory, Leonardo DiCaprio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Adam Driver in Marriage Story, Joaquin Phoenix in Joker, and Jonathan Pryce in The Two Popes. And Joaquin Phoenix won this one to nobody's surprise, I don't think, although I would have loved to have seen Leo win it for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Leo did so good. Him and Adam Driver would have been mine too. that I've been really happy
once
with.
once Krista and I actually watched Joker, which we don't really have a timeline on it, we just kind of feel like we're gonna have to be in the mood to watch it. I've just heard so many mixed things about Joker, but the one thing I have heard is that Joaquin Phoenix did what he did in most of the movies he's been in like the last 10 years, is he went completely into them, all in. And if anything, that's what makes him a very good actor and very deserving of the award from everything I've heard. Aaron was one of the majority that I heard of people said it was just okay. It's kind of like the way I feel about Parasite. Like, a lot of people think Joker was just okay, and it was good, but it was just fine, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So we are now down to our final category of the podcast and final category of the Oscars, which is the Best Picture nominations. Motion Picture of the Year nominees. So we have Ford vs. Ferrari, The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite. And as foreshadowed earlier, Parasite did win, which I think took a lot of people off guard because they were expecting, Joker or one of the other ones. Or 1917. It's kind of what I was expecting. But hey, we've said it a million times, but I'll say it again. Representation is important, especially in the public eye that these actors are in. And it gives me hope for the future of the Oscars that we're going to see more diversity, more representation. I'm trying to be as impartial about this as I can. I'm very happy that he won so many things for this movie.
Because he's very grateful.
He's very grateful. You can tell he cares about it a lot. But as a moviegoer and as someone who loved Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Knives Out, I wanted to see them better represented, which I know a lot of people argue like to be nominated is an achievement in and of itself, because 2019 really was a hell of a year for movies. There were a lot of really good ones. Some of them didn't get nominated at all, but if you want to hear my top 10 movies of the year and all my honorable mentions, go back to episode 2 of the ANG cast. But I think that's going to do it for us here today. Is there anything you want to add here at the end?
Parasite is the first subtitled movie or foreign language movie to ever win Best Movie Picture.
Which is crazy, but yeah.
It's crazy. Out of almost 100 years of the Oscars, this is the first time a foreign language film being nominated and winning.
It almost makes you wonder if like Pan's Labyrinth was probably nominated, right? But I don't know if it won.
I'm not sure.
It probably won for like visual effects or cinematography or something back in the day. If I was more prepared, I would have had a list of like past winners pulled up, but that would have been hard to dilute that down to what I wanted to get out of it. But anyway, that's going to do it for us today here on the ANG cast, the podcast where we talk about video games and everything in between. We did not talk about video games today. We only talked about movies.
That's like one of, if you know us, that's one of our favorite things to do is go to concerts and go to see movies. So this is like a big part of our lives. So.
Yeah, movies are probably like, movies and music are probably a very close second to video games for me as like my number one favorite hobbies and passions. But anyway, I don't know when this is going to get posted. We recorded this 2 days after the Oscars, but if you've been following us on social media, we've been taking a couple-week break here just for a mental health break and just to, take a couple weeks off from posting and streaming. So by the time
the first one we post after our break.
This will probably be the first thing we post after the break, so this will likely go up on Monday, which would be the 17th, if all goes according to plan. But we have been recording some stuff in the meantime, including a brand new series that is going to remain a surprise until the day we post it. But I'm going to tell you who I did it with at least. Alex from Swirly Games, who I do my streams with on Fridays, the Division Dudes, the Border Boys. I went over to his place and we recorded it with his setup, a brand new series that's going to be premiering next week or the week after. We've been recording some episodes of that. We've got some other fun stuff in the works. We want to take a look, maybe for like a Whatever Wednesdays, I might do a look at Dreams, which is the Mario Maker equivalent on PS4 from the people who made Little Big Planet over at Media Molecule. But that game, I've been playing it in early access for a while, and it's been fucking fantastic. But it's going into full release as of this Friday, the 14th, Valentine's Day. So we're going to likely take a look at that here in the next couple weeks. We've also got a new Division Dudes coming next Friday, which would be the 21st, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, I should have a baby challenge out.
Yeah, and Christa should have a new baby challenge out here within the next couple weeks by the time you're hearing this. And so, like I said, new Division Dudes next Friday, the 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern over at the Adjective Gaming Twitch channel. And speaking of that, follow us on social media if you haven't already. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and give us
more active on Twitter more than anything.
More active on Twitter, but yeah. So follow us on there. Follow us everywhere else. Give us a subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. Subscribe to us on Twitch and Mixer so that you never miss a live stream. Thank you to my wife, Christa, for being here on this podcast with me today. Thank you to everybody for listening, and we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.